what would you say is the most important item that you were looking for out of the Hawkeyes for camp? If we could rewind a couple of weeks or maybe even a couple of months, and I said, okay, Zach, you can get one thing out of Hawkeye camp, what would it have been?
I think for me, I mean, the obvious answer is the quarterback. Showing that he's capable of making big and explosive plays in the passing game. I think almost any Iowa fan would say that. But for the sake of changing things up a little bit and giving some other position groups some attention, for me, it's probably that left tackle spot. It's been one of the biggest question marks all season long. It still kind of is a question mark. We don't really know who's going to start at left tackle. We have an idea that it might be Trevor Lau, considering he got the start at Kids Day, but then Tim Lester and everyone tried to not put too much credit into that. And so we still don't have an answer to that question, even after camp and Kids Day. And so I was hoping that we would maybe have something set in stone by right now, but that's really the biggest thing that I wanted to find out from camp. And unfortunately, we don't have that yet. But I would say also a shout out to the secondary as well. Just wanting to see what Iowa had in that room. And we've heard some really good things about Colin Entringer, about Zach Lutmer, about TJ Hall as well. It seems like he's taken a really big step this year. And so I would say that's a really big positive development that I was kind of worried about heading into camp was how's that secondary going to look without Quinn Schulte, without Jamari Harris, without Sebastian Castro. And so it seems like things are trending in the right direction for that unit. And so I would say I'm pretty happy about that. But obviously it's the quarterback position and showing off those explosive plays, which we did get to see a little bit from Kids Day.
And I think that is the slam dunk choice. If you only get one, it's okay, rewind that clock, put the sand back in the top of the hourglass, and it's Iowa by the end of camp feels better about its passing game. Not even just, I guess I'll go a little more macro than just saying Mark Gronowski, right? The passing game. If you can leave camp feeling like you've got the best throw game that you've had in more than half a decade, probably that's your largest goal that you're trying to get out of camp. So it sounds like Iowa has made some progress on that front. But you mentioned Trevor Lau, and the latest buzz intel that you're getting out of Iowa camp is that maybe he's separated a little bit at left tackle. So if indeed that's the case, that Trevor Lau has separated at left tackle, he's going to win that job, it sounds like. Does that make you feel good? Is that what you were hoping to hear at left tackle?
I think I was keeping my options open. I wasn't necessarily sold on anyone. I didn't have a horse in the race per se. Jack Doetsler has had some more experience, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's the best fit for that spot. Trevor Lau is someone who, a 3-star recruit a couple of years ago. He's a younger guy as well, someone that could really develop into that role at left tackle for the next couple seasons. And so I didn't really have a horse in the race for that left tackle role. I was keeping it open, and I trust the coaching staff to put the best option out there at that spot. If it's Trevor Lau, then it's Trevor Lau. And I think that Iowa fans should get behind that. I should get behind that choice. And then there's some options on the table. If Lau struggles, you can go to Doetsler. You can go to maybe a Cannon Leonard if things get really, really drastic. But I think I trust George Barnett and that Iowa coaching staff to put the best combination of linemen out there. And if Lau could separate himself, that's great. But I found out a fun stat this morning when I was doing my Sam Phillips story for Hawkeye Wire about the Iowa passing game, that they haven't passed. They have an average more than 200 passing yards per game in a season since 2019, which is just wild to think about. That it's been 5 seasons that Iowa has gone without averaging more than 200 passing yards per game, which for many programs and many teams nationwide is just a standard benchmark. If you don't pass for 200 yards in a game, it's like, what the heck happened? Something's gone drastically wrong. And Iowa hasn't averaged that over the past 5 years. So, obviously it's that passing game that it needs to see improvement. At the bare minimum, it has to go over 200 passing yards a game. And I would say probably closer to 225, 230 at the very least, in order for me to be pretty satisfied with that. But a lot of questions for that offense heading into 2025, and we're going to find out early on just how much improvement that they've made.
Sounds like, and I'm not shocked to hear this, but Mark Gronowski getting sharper as we go throughout camp, which that's, Zach, what we've been saying is probably the kids' day at Kinnick scrimmage, that open practice, there was going to be some rust. Your coach came right out, your head coach, not even your offensive coordinator. Kirk Ferentz came out and told you, hey, he was rusty to start this thing. And Tim Lester, before Kids Day, said he was 6 of 9 passing his first day of practice, and there wasn't a football that touched the ground, which you could do the math on that. That means that 3 wound up in the opposing jersey. So 3 wound up where they weren't supposed to go. So that is not shocking that it maybe at times was a little rocky, and I think we got a glimpse of that from Kids Day at Kinnick, but it sounds like it's starting to tighten up, to sharpen up, which is what we're hoping for with Mark Gronowski.
Yeah, I mean, if you can just take those steps forward, every single practice, every single time that you're out there with the guys, like that's really the most important thing for Gronowski. And he's not going to be a finished product when Iowa takes the field in 12 days against Albany. Like it's going to take some time. I think we probably won't see Gronowski at his best until about hopefully by week 5 when Indiana rolls into town. I think that's ideally when you want to see that offense really kick things into gear. Probably week 4 against Rutgers, though, would be more ideal. But I think having the expectations in check that he's going to struggle a little bit, probably in that Albany game, although the foul stat should look good in that, and especially during that Iowa State game. There's probably going to be a mistake or two that you're not the biggest fan of, but you can't rule out a Mark Gronowski turnaround based on a couple early season mistakes. It's just about him getting better every single day. And I think ultimately, as you enter Big Ten play, if your offense is rolling then, I think that's what Iowa fans would hope for. If you don't want to peak too soon.
If I tell you tonight that TJ Hall, Deshaun Lee are your 2 starting cornerbacks, that was a big competition. And I know that that's not the head coach coming out and saying those are the 2 starting quarterbacks. So I'm not saying totally the competition's a wrap, but it sounds like it's trending in that direction for Iowa. So if I tell you that TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee are your starting cornerbacks, what's your reaction to that bit of news?
Can you repeat that question, Josh? You're kind of cutting in and out there. So I caught TJ Hall, your reaction to that news.
My apologies, and please let me know if my internet connection
no,
is
good. You're good. Yeah.
If I tell you tonight that one of the big competitions that you had going in was cornerback, what's going to happen there? If I tell you that it's trending, that TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee are going to win those jobs, which it sounds like it's starting to trend that direction, what reaction do you have to that?
I'd say I'm pretty happy about that overall. I mean, we know Iowa brought in Shahid Barros, who people are excited about as a transfer from, I believe, South Dakota State. I'm pretty sure, or South Dakota. I think is Barros, and so people are pretty excited about him. But Hall and Lee have experience in the program and at that position. Obviously, there's been ups and downs with both of them. We've seen some plays where they've been chasing receivers are running free to the end zone because they got burnt on a route. And so I think there's, if you're concerned about that position or if you don't feel comfortable with that, I think you're very valid to feel that with the lack of a lot of successful, reps for both of those guys in the regular season. But I think the guys, especially Hall, just based on what we've heard from Phil Parker and from a lot of the other defensive guys, it seems like he's been the one that's really, taken that stardom leap this offseason. And so I think I feel comfortable about him, and also having that depth in the room too. So, if Lee struggles, we can go to Barros or we can go to Watson maybe out there. And there's options in that room. It's not, in previous years, Cooper DeJean goes down and all of a sudden you're throwing out guys that really have no business being on on a Big Ten football field. I think there's a lot of depth in that room this year, and so I'm curious. I think curious is probably the best word I can use to describe that room. I want to see what they can do. I want to see how Hall looks, and Deshaun Lee can prove a lot of Iowa fans wrong who maybe think that he's not fit for that position. So I think curious is probably the best word I would use to describe that room in 2025.
Yeah, and anxious. I think anxious is a fair word. Uncertain about what you're going to get, I think is a fair word. I'm optimistic. I'm excited. What I've heard about, in particular, TJ Hall over the course of this spring into the summer and now into the fall. But the bottom line is each of those two guys, we've seen Zach some good, and we've seen those guys get toasted up a little bit. So when that's the case, I think it's fair to have some legitimate questions there. I thought maybe Jalen Watson could make a legitimate run at earning one of those starting gigs. Obviously, Shaheed Barrows, who you brought in from South Dakota, and we kind of heard initially that he at South Dakota, a similar system to what Iowa and Phil Parker are running, and that could maybe give him that early, quick green light to some playing time, but it hasn't maybe necessarily totally played out that way. So I guess you're going to start the way that you kind of finished the spring, or you started this spring, right? Which is, it sounds like TJ Hall and Deshaun Lee at corner. And we'll see. I still anticipate that Shaheed Barrows will play plenty. And Jalen Watson, you're hearing that he's somebody that can kind of get mixed and matched around, that maybe he'll be an option for Iowa at cash